Yep. Okay, the meeting started, so I'll now take the sedient for the Social Work Resources Committee of the 7th of September 2022. I see in the meeting we have Councillors Alex Allison, John Bradley, Walter Brogan, Robert Brown. Is Archie Buchanan in the meeting? Don't see Councillor Buchanan. We have present Matthew Buchanan. We have apologies for Janine Calickis, and Councillor Joan Anderson is substituting for her. In the meeting we have Councillors Maureen Devlin, Mary Donnelly, Joe Fagan. Do we have Joe Fagan? No. We've got Councillors Alan Faulkner, Elise Frame, Lindsay Hamilton, Shalene Handyboat. Do we have Graham Horn in the meeting? I don't see Councillor Horn either. Let me just have a quick check. No. We have in the meeting Councillor Horsham, Councillor Hose, Councillor Johnson Dempsey. We have apologies from Eileen Logan, and Councillor Davy McLachlan is substituting for her. We also have in the meeting Councillor Hugh MacDonald, Kathleen McClyman and Richard Nelson. Do we have Councillor Nugent in the meeting? Don't see Councillor Nugent online. Apologies. Okay, apologies from Councillor Nugent. We have apologies from Councillor Ross, and we have in the meeting Councillor Margaret Walker and David Watson. I'll hand back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. I'll move on to item 1, declaration of interests. Are there any? No. Okay. Item 2, going on to monitoring items, is the Revenue Budget Monitoring 21-22 for the period 1st of April 2021 to 31st of March 2022, pages 5 to 14 in your pack. And I'll invite Hazel Goodwin to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide information on actual expenditure against budget for social work resources for the full financial year 21-22. That's 1st of April 2021 to 31st of March 2022. This is the fourth and final report we brought to committee for the financial year 21-22. If I can refer you to section 5.1 of the report on page 5, we note there that there was an overspend of 0.916 million against the annual budget, and that was before our transfers to reserves. A transfer to reserves of 2.051 million was approved by the Executive Committee on the 29th of June 2022, and that then took the final resource position to an overspend of 2.967 million. At section 5.2, we note there that within adults and older people services, as detailed in Appendix D to the report, there was an underspend of 2.082 million before transfers to council reserves. The budget delegated to the IGIB was underspent by 8.827 million, and the council agreed to the IGIB retaining 6.746 million of this non-recurring underspend for future care costs. Of the remaining underspend, 2.051 million was transferred to a council reserve, and this is to be used in 22-23 towards projected pressures within the Children and Family Services budget. Section 5.3 of the report notes that the overall 2.967 million overspend is made up of additional costs for COVID-related expenditure within Children and Family Services. That was 2.573 million. And also there was another overspend, 0.394 million, which was non-COVID related. Further details are included in the report appendices B through to F. At section 5.4 of the report, just confirm again that additional COVID related expenditure for services that were devolved to the IGIB have been fully funded by Scottish Government. That included expenditure on additional beds to facilitate discharge from hospital, expenditure on support for carers, personal protective equipment, staff overtime, sustainability and additional costs being incurred by external social care providers. So just for your information, those additional costs and income from Scottish Government are included in Appendix B and totalled 15.702 million. In addition to those extra costs, social work resources also suffered a loss of income because services weren't provided during the emergency. That totalled 2.069 million, and that's included separately at Appendix D. In terms of the report then, if I could refer members back to section 2, committee is asked to note the final outturn overspend of 2.967 million after transfers to reserves, and also if you could approve the proposed budget variance included in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Hazel. Are there any comments, questions? Richard Nelson. Sorry, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Probably this should come up in workforce monitoring, but since it's in the appendix, most of the appendices, it's in the pressures and the issues relating to vacancies within social work services and how we are tackling that issue, what we're doing to make it attractive for people to come and work within social work in South Lanarkshire Council.
Hazel, do you want to respond to that?
So, as noted in the report, the actively seeking to recruit those positions. I think, as you say, probably somebody in personnel could maybe give you more detail on how we actually are encouraging that.
Yeah, there's a number of ongoing recruitment campaigns, and actually you'll see later on in the agenda we've got the Social Work Resources Workforce Plan, and I'll be referencing some of the recruitment practices just to enable us to recruit and retain staff in terms of recruiting to current vacancies, but also moving forward in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments on the report? Questions? Sorry, Ian.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. So just to add into Eileen saying there, I think as we go through the set of reports, there's a number of initiatives we'll be outlining in terms of recruitment into the social work service. Scott's also got some video material to share later on in the meeting, highlighting some of our recruitment campaigns for care at home staff. And what I would say, there does seem to be a national shortage of social care workers, social workers, NHS staff, and we're competing obviously with other sectors and other local authority areas for key staff. So we are working hard to maintain recruitment, to look at things like job evaluation to make sure our job roles are properly evaluated and competitive, and trying to look at how we can be imaginative in our recruitment campaigns going forward so we can market the service as well as we can do.
Thanks, Ian. As Ian says, there's a fairly comprehensive report on the workforce plan touching on these issues in terms of recruitment and putting forward various measures. I have Councillor Faulkner wanting to speak.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on Ian's point about care at home workers, a recruitment campaign. It's a well-known fact that our care at home workers in South Lanarkshire are paid more than £2,500 less than were colleagues and indeed were partners in the Lanarkshire Health and Social Care Forum. So a wee bit up in the money, because it's well known that the care at home workers continually are looking for care at home workers to work their days off, to work overtime and that, and they're already stretched. So we maybe reconsider what we're actually paying them, and then the recruitment campaign might be more successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Faulkner. Are there respond to that, Ian?
Yeah, maybe just to kind of try and give some assurance. We're currently having a look at the care at home job role and the grading through the council's kind of grading scheme, just to make sure we are paying our staff properly in accordance with the work that they do, and across the kind of the council grading process. So that's currently a live exercise.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Hazel. I don't see any other comments or questions, so I will move on to item 3, which is the revenue. Oh, sorry. I'll get used to this. Do we agree the recommendations in the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2022 to 2023 for the period 1st of April to 15th of July 2022, and it's pages 15 to 22 in your pack. And again, I'll ask Hazel if she would speak to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the purpose of the report is to provide information excuse me, on actual expenditure against the budget for the period 1st of April 2022 to 15th of July 2022. So this is the first revenue monitoring report to committee for financial year 22-23. At section 5.1 of the report on page 15, we note that as at 15th of July 2022, there was an underspend of 0.407 million against the phased budget, all of which arises within adults and older people services and is due to staff vacancies. Section 5.2 notes that within adults and older people services, there are likely to be further underspends. Within finance services, we're currently in discussion with the Chief Financial Officer from the IGIB just to confirm what we believe the position to be as we go through the year, and we will report back to committee with more details on that. Section 5.3 notes that within children and family services, budget pressures have continued into 22-23 in relation to residential placements, fostering and kinship care, some of which is a legacy from the pandemic. There has been a one-off addition to the Children and Family Services budget of 3.451 million, and that has been funded from the money set aside in the reserves at the end of 21-22, the 2.051 million that I mentioned in the last report. In addition to that, there was a further 1.4 million from the Children and Families Residential Reserve that was set aside in 2021. In addition to that additional budget, there is also some remaining council COVID funding up to the value of £3 million, which is available to assist with this pressure. Period 4 overspend position in children and families of 0.167 million is after taking account of that drawdown of the 3.451 million. And that's currently been managed by an underspend within performance and support. Just to note that the council continues to incur a bit of expenditure in relation to COVID-19. Those costs are now included within the individual service reports. We no longer have a separate COVID appendix. The COVID-19 related expenditure incurred by social work services in the adult and older people service will continue to be funded by a COVID reserves that's currently held by the IGIB. Again, the additional costs, as mentioned in the last report, additional beds to facilitate discharge from hospital, personal protective equipment, staff overtime, sustainability costs for external providers. Again, if I could refer members back to section 2 of the report, committee's asked to note the underspend of 0.407 million and also to approve the proposed budget amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. I have Councillor MacDonald.
I think you've switched the mic off.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on 5.3, if I may. The 3.451 million that is currently being, I suppose, managed by the underspend on performance and support, how confident are we that that will continue, or are we expecting to see additional budget pressures within children and families that may not be able to be managed in this way? Thanks.
I'll ask Suman to respond to that.
Good morning. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. So that's a very live question for us at the moment that we're working on. We're obviously committed to making sure we operate within the budget we've got available. And as you'll have noted from some of the other material that our finance colleagues have highlighted, there's ongoing discussions with the Chief Financial Officer of the IGB about the ongoing use of any kind of slippages in terms of future years. So I would be in a better position to answer that question at the next meeting, in fairness, after those discussions have concluded. The other reason to note upon that is obviously in terms of pay award and so on, that's the other reason why there's a heightened degree of uncertainty at this moment in time. But I would hope members would be reassured that officers are looking at this intently for obvious reasons and that we will report back to the committee at an appropriate point.
Thanks, Suman. I don't see any more hands up. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. I'll move on to item 4, which is the capital budget monitoring 2021 to 2022 for the period 1st of April 2021 to 31st of March 2022, and that's pages 23 to 26 in your pack. and I'll ask Lorraine O'Hagan, please, to speak to the report.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Committee. As the Chair advised, this is the first capital monitoring report of the two that we've got for this committee meeting, and it relates to the old financial year 2021-22. So it's to give the full position to committee for the resources capital spend, as we had included in the overall council position that was reported to Executive Committee back in June. So section 3 of your report gives you the background and explains the budget position for the year. So the budget for the resources capital programme was 5.354 million, and that was the position and the budget that we reported to committee back in February, the last report that we came to committee with, and there's been no changes to the budget allocation since that meeting. So section 5 then details the financial implications. Section 5.1 notes the total programme for the year of the 5.354, and we had a final spend position for the year of 5.054 million, so an underspend there of 300,000 on the approved programme. Section 5.2 explains the main projects responsible for the underspend, and I can advise committee that it's really just timing of spend across those projects, and I can pick that up in the New Year report in a moment or two. Section 5.3 notes that any funding that we didn't utilise in 21-22 will carry forward into the new financial year. And just for any new members, just for your information, the capital programme is a bit more fluid than the revenue one. So if we don't spend the money in the old year, we generally carry it forward into the new year so that we're allowed, so that we can complete the projects that we've got in the programme as they were approved. So, as I say, I'll pick up on the New Year programme in a second. So I've got nothing else to highlight to committee at this point, so if I can refer you back to the recommendations in section 2 of the report and ask that the social work resources budget of 5.354 million and the final spend for the year of 5.05 million be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorraine. I don't see any questions or comments. Do we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 5 is the capital budget monitoring 2022 to 2023 for the period 1st of April to the 15th of July, and that's pages 27 to 30 in your report, and I'll ask Lorraine again to speak to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the New Year report then for the capital programme, and it reflects the period to the 15th of July, which is our accounting period 4. So again, section 3 gives you the background and explains that the budget was based on the overall capital programme for the year presented to the Executive Committee back at the meeting in June. Section 5 details the financial implications. So 5.1 notes the resources capital programme for the current year is 3.903 million. So that budget's based on the original programme of projects that we had approved back in February and updated to take account of some adjustments that we have been identified by the resource, reflecting what we reported to committee back in June and explaining that there were a couple of profile changes in terms of some of the big projects that we had, and the details of those are in Appendix A. So the budget of 3.903 million is what we're working on for the current year. Section 5.3 notes that of that budget for the year, we had anticipated spend of 1.680 as at the 15th of July and spend of 1.793. So we're actually ahead of programme as at the middle of July, and that reflects the timing of spend in relation to the Blantyre Care Facility project, which is progressing well on site, and that's the flip, I suppose, of the underspend that we had last year. So it is just explaining to you that we had a bit of a profile issue over the year end, and we've caught back up to where we should be. So again, nothing else to highlight to committee, so I'll be looking to refer you back to the recommendations in section 2 of your report, that the social work resources budget of 3.903 million and spend of 1.793 million to the 15th of July be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorraine. I don't see any hands up or comments or questions. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 6 is the workforce monitoring April to June 2022, and that's pages 31 to 38 in your pack. And could I ask Aileen McPake to speak to this, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is the standard report providing employment information for the resource covering the period April to June 2022. So section 4.1 outlines attendance statistics for committee, and the details are in Appendix 1. So the absence rate for the resource was 7.6% compared to a council-wide figure of 5.3%. So there is an increase compared to the previous month and compared to the figure for the same period of the last year. In terms of the absence in relation to COVID, the council-wide absence at the time the report was generated was 4.73%, and 1.07% of that related to COVID absence. Taking all of this into account, there's a projected annual average for the resource of 8.1% compared to a council-wide figure of 6.1%. So section 4.2 to 4.5, the details are in Appendix 2, and the main points are that during the period there was 369 occupational health referrals, there was no disciplinary hearings, grievances or dignity at work issues. There was 31 accidents or incidents recorded during the period, and there was 49 leavers during the period, and of them 53% completed exit interviews. Details of vacant posts during the period are in Appendix 2, and 90 posts became vacant. 87 of these posts are being filled, 2 ended due to a fixed term contract, and 1 has been held pending a review of the service. So I'll refer committee back to section 2 and ask that the workforce monitoring information for social work resources covering the period April to June 2022 be noted.
Thank you. I have Councillor Frame.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question. We're going on about the staffing. So, and people have been off, like sick and long-term sick. What percentage of that is due down to mental health during COVID? And what are we doing as to help with that and to help get these staff back to work and to help the environment itself?
So you'll be aware that the Council's maximising attendance procedures provide a wide range of supports for employees who are absent, to support them while they're absent and also to support their return to work for a variety of reasons, including COVID and including mental health. So that there is an employee assistance programme that employees can access. That's part of the occupational health statistics that were reported to committee. But certainly it's something that we continue to monitor, and we continue to work with managers in all the service areas to make sure that employees are getting the correct support, well, as I say, while they're off, and also to enable them to return to work.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. Councillor Allison.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, congratulate you on doubling the percentage of the interviews, interviews that have been held. I think the information that provides is important, but I would like to see that increased further, because the number of leavers is also up by about 15%. And one of the things I think you do need in social care in particular is continuity. And I'm also concerned or wanting to know a breakdown of localities as to where these leavers, if you like, are coming from. Is it a rural problem, an urban problem? So that we can identify basically what the problem is and reduce that number so that we can get the continuity and fewer vacancies.
Thanks, Councillor Allison. Councillor Brown.
Yes, sorry, thanks. Can I get an answer, please?
Sorry, Aileen, do you want to respond to that just now?
So, firstly, yes, I can provide the breakdown. I'll provide that separately. I can provide the breakdown in terms of by locality, in terms of the analysis of leavers. In terms of what we're doing to address leavers, I would probably just refer to the fact that the workforce plan is going to be discussed later, so there is a number of strategies that are in place to increase recruitment and retention across social care.
Thanks, Eileen. Happy with that, Councillor Allison? Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I think the level of absences continues to be obviously concerning at the level it's at. I know that there's all sorts of issues behind it in terms of, the aftermath of COVID and so forth, but nevertheless, I think it is a big challenge to try and get that back to some sort of more satisfactory figure. And clearly there's presumably some sort of linkage as well to the number of leavers, which, as Alec Allison says, has gone up over a period. It seems quite a large number of leavers. Are we getting a flavour from the exit interviews of the reasons for leaving, the background to some of these? I know we've got the other report later on, but getting on top of this is quite important, and it does seem to me there's a link between the, if you like, the pressures on the workforce, which presumably lie behind this to some degree, and the the staff numbers, if you like, at the end of the day. Any comment on that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Brown. I'll ask Suman to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'll let Aileen come in a second to elaborate, but it's so absolutely we're very conscious about both recruitment and also retention, given the environment that we're at, and also, and we've talked about it here before, the needs of the workforce, given what we've been through over the last 2+ years in respect to this work. By way of context, before I hand over to Aileen, is the fact that we are finding this across actually all providers within the social care sector, so not just those within local government, but actually within our independent sector providers at the moment. It's a very fluid environment. So if we were to look at the total number of, say, if we were looking at care at home, for example, and Scott will talk more about it later, we've brought in just shy of 5,000 extra hours worth of staff over the last 12 months. We've also essentially lost just an equivalent around the same number in terms of people moving on. If you look at what's happened with our independent providers, though, they've also lost about the same amount. So actually there's a lot of movement within the social care field at the moment, and I think that speaks to Councillor Allison's point around the importance of continuity here. This is a real challenge across the piece, and actually our biggest challenge here is about how we overall increase the pool of individuals who are working within the social care sector, because at the moment effectively it is very much a seller's market in terms of where people are going, and they're moving very fast. So there's going to be periods of time where we're going to see a lot more people coming to us, and then they will move again, and we're seeing it across all areas. This is we need to, again, you've all noted, a degree of stability within the environment, and we're working very hard, and I'll let Aileen pick up on that.
Thanks, Suman.
Yeah, I was just probably going to echo what Suman's already said. It's a national issue in terms of the fluidity of the workforce, and it's not actually just specific to social care. We are actually seeing, nationally a workforce supply problem, and that will be covered later in the workforce plan paper. Thanks.
Thanks, Eileen. I don't see any more questions or comments. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. The next item is Social Work Resource Plan Q4 Progress Report 2021 to 2022, and that's pages 39 to 66 in your pack. And I believe Martin Kane is going to speak to this, and Martin is joining us remotely, I think.
Okay, so this is the Q4 progress report covering the period April 21 to March 2022. Just taking you through the report, it's a standard report that we present to committee. So by way of section 3, that's just a little bit of background in terms of how our resource plan and measures relate to the overall council objectives. But what I would do is draw committee to section 5.2, which gives an overall summary of where we are in terms of the number of measures that are reporting blue, green, amber, red, and reporting later contextual. So in total, there's 38 measures that we report on within the Q4 resource plan report. 8% of those are blue, 65% green, 3% amber, and 3% red, and 21 report contextual later. 5.3 just gives a wee overview of the progress that's been made against some of the most positive areas in the report. What we'll do again is draw committee to the areas for improvement, and you'll see under section 5.4.1 there's 2 measures in particular reporting amber and red, and those relate to community payback. Now what I would say against each of those, the first measure, whilst slightly off in terms of performance, is now reporting at 74% as at Q1 of this year, and the other measure itself is reporting at 72%. So what we're beginning to see with that is those 2 areas were quite badly impacted by COVID in terms of the number of or the volume of activity we could put through in terms of unpaid work and community payback. But with things stepping back up, we're beginning to see a gradual increase in, obviously, performance that way. I'm not going to go through all the appendix as such because there's quite a lot of detail within that, and you'll see just how that's ragged in terms of red, amber, green, etc. So what I would do is draw committee back to section 2 of the report and the 3 recommendations and ask that the report is noted, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. I have Councillor MacDonald.
Figure this out eventually. Thanks, Chair. I've got a number of questions on item 7. Do you want me to ask them en bloc, or would you prefer to have them one at a time?
What would you prefer, Martin?
I'll take them all at once, Hugh, and I'll just take a wee note and I'll take them in order if I can.
Okay, thanks, Martin. So, item 7, so page 41 about promoting choice. What's the breakdown across resources, and what impact has COVID had in service users being able to access support from outside agencies? On page 43, it's number 7. How successful have we been in recruiting agency or sessional staff to support unpaid work? And what does this cost compared to our normal hourly rate? On page 46, I'd like to know what the impact has recruitment and retention had on achieving our goals around early intervention and prevention, and what our plans are to implement the findings of the Setting the Bar survey of social workers to enhance our ability to attract applicants for social work posts. Page 50. Given almost half of our child protection investigations don't proceed to initial case conference, does this indicate that further work is required around the IRD process to prevent unnecessary investigations taking place, reducing stress on service users and workload for social workers? Page 52. Are we assessing a potential increase in the number of young people requiring to be looked after away from home due to the pressure on families resulting from the cost of living crisis? And have we estimated the potential additional budget pressure? Page 58. Have there been issues identifying care providers to enable hospital discharges to take place? I know that I've been made aware of some difficulties from residents. I'm sure other members have. So can you advise what steps are being taken to address this? Page 62. I'm actually pleased to see that consultation is still at the forefront of our thinking to strengthen engagement, but how will we ensure this is inclusive and takes account of all the different views being expressed, particularly from some in the learning disabled community? Page 63. Has there been an increase in charge from external providers due to the current economic climate, and what impact might this have on individual service users' care plans? And you'll be glad to know this is the last one, Martin. Page 65. What reasons are being given for the higher level of absence and turnover of staff compared to other resources? Are there any particular problem areas, i.e. children and families, or particular offices? Thank you.
That's a fair old list. I'll try and go through it. I've noted them down and I'll try and go through. So the promoting choice one, and I'll draw in colleagues as well if you don't mind, just as we go through these. So just on the promoting choice, I take it that's the one that's relating to SDS. So what we tend to do with that is we obviously assess service users and then offer the choice of the 4 options. That then works its way into a support plan, and we monitor that support plan against the actual options and outcomes that service user or carer has obviously stipulated. So what we try and do, Councillor, is we try and match those inputs to the outcomes within the care plan to obviously meet the choices that they make. In terms of point 2, I'll probably bring Gillian in on that because that was more related to the justice element of things, if you don't mind, and then I'll pick up the other ones that I can. So I'll pass to Gillian just for point 2 that you'd made.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you for your question, Councillor. We've proactively looked at our unpaid work supervisor workforce, and we did consider that to try and promote the ability to have more placements, that we would look at recruiting sessional supervisors. That has been successful, and for all 5 places that we had put out for recruitment, we've managed to fill them. So at this moment in time, we're going through the training process. Obviously, the staff that we've recruited into those sessional supervisor posts have got other employment. So we're looking to see how we manage to ensure that all the training, health and safety, safe work practices and working with our service user group is covered. So that's going to take a few weeks, but yeah, hopeful that this will work, and we can give updates in due course. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gillian. And just moving on, my next one I've got down is CP investigations. What I'll do for you is I'll get a breakdown of CP investigations by locality. There is a wee bit of some trend analysis within the workforce report that does show that area obviously to be increasing. But again, in terms of the conversion to case conference and registration, etc., I can provide some further detail on that for you if that's helpful. In terms of assessing potential around looked after children, we are aware that obviously the number of looked after children we have within South Lanarkshire is steadily increasing and has done over a period of time. Some of that is down to the way we actually record looked after children now, because obviously included within that are kinship care numbers, which make up quite a sizable chunk of the numbers of children looked after. There's a couple of key measures within that where we look at balance of care as well. So what we try and do, or one of the measures that we're obviously held to account for nationally, is the balance of care. Currently within South Lanarkshire, we're sitting with 10% of looked after children who are within residential and other what I would call secure settings, etc., with the remainder being in the community. And that's really reflective of that point I was making around kinship care. Issues identifying care in terms of the provision of hospital discharge. Suman touched on this just earlier in the points that were made earlier, Councillor Dunsmore. And what I would say around that, and Scott and Ian might want to comment on this, is some of that is primarily down to the fact that we have quite a lot of movement of workforce and quite a lot of movement between providers. So Suman had made the point that actually it's very difficult for us to ever get ahead of the capacity, would be the way I would explain that, and that as we recruit, we're also losing as well. So that's partly down to some of the issues around hospital discharge in terms of managing that. Ian and Scott, I'm not sure whether you want to add to that, just in terms of, because primarily some of this does obviously relate to care at home.
Yeah, so I can just pick up on that. So, as Martin's saying, quite a lot of the challenges around sufficient availability of care at home. So, essentially, the services run pretty full pretty much all the time, and we're seeing kind of rising demand in the population. Some of that's kind of general demographic driven, but also there's a post-COVID impact in terms of people having delays in getting health treatments, and the acute sites being busy, very busy all the time as well. So that's increasing referrals through to the partnership. Later on in the papers, we talk about the Home First initiative. So we have received additional funding from Scottish Government to grow the care at home service, whether both internally and externally, and we've been working on that. So some of that infrastructure is kind of falling into place, and we are starting to get ahead of the curve now in terms of our recruitment of carers. But as you'll see from later papers, we're looking to recruit a pretty substantial workforce, and the supply line for that workforce is challenging, and that's why we're really working hard to try and attract people into the service as best that we can do. But we'll cover that in a bit more detail later on.
Okay, and the last 3 points I had was one around consultation, increasing charges to external providers, and staff turnover. So just dealing with each of those. Staff turnover, I think Eileen probably picked up on some of that within the HR report, but again, some of that will be picked up on in the workforce report, which is due further on the agenda. Changing charges or increasing charges for external providers. Again, there's something further on the agenda that relates to charging and what those rates are set as. Councillor Dunsmore, so we may pick up on some of that there. Consultation, I didn't quite catch. I was scribbling frantically and I didn't quite catch what the point was around consultation. Was it around you were pleased to see that there was active consultation going on across the resource around learning disability, if I picked it up correctly?
Yeah, I did kind of mention that, but I was more looking at terms of how we're going to be inclusive, because I've had a number of people contact me, particularly from the learning disabled community, in terms of how we are going to ensure that their needs are also at the forefront of what we're trying to achieve in terms of supporting people. And there was one question that you missed, Martin, which I'm hardly surprised given the number that I threw at you. But the other one was around the setting the bar survey. So if you could maybe just give us some information on what the next steps are for the council in terms of supporting workers to attend that, and also to take into consideration the findings from that in terms of us being able to attract and retain social works and care staff. Thank you.
Yes, so setting the bar, no, you're right, that was, I had something down about applicants there. Setting the bar, yes, what it flagged up was a number of areas around the demands on the social care workforce and average caseloads, etc. So we've provided some information back to that in response to that report. And obviously we're trying to do a number of things locally, and some of these have been mentioned in previous reports around recruitment and retention. We're also doing things like investing quite a bit of money in Lorraine touched on this in the Capital report, into a new system to enable the workforce to, I suppose in a sense, be more satisfied with the case recording element of the job they do, because the current system we have around Swiss, etc., is an aging system. So part of that will help when we surveyed the workforce around some of the areas that were causing them additional issues with the role that they undertake. The system that we currently use is obviously one of those ones that was flagged up. Again, I don't know whether Eileen or Ian want to comment further on the setting the bar stuff, but currently, as I say, we're looking at things like average caseloads.
Yeah, I can maybe offer a couple of comments there as well. Yeah, so clearly we've been having a look at the Setting the Bar report, and I think it's a helpful report in trying to describe what's a reasonable workload for a social work assistant. As Martin's saying, we've been we're already listening to what our workforce have been telling us about the challenges they face day to day. We do see turnover of social workers to other authorities. Where folks are a bit more experienced, they're attracted to other job roles and other authorities. So we're having a look at that. So later in the agenda, we have got papers hopefully starting to address some of those issues. So the workforce told us that the IT system was dated and clunky, so we bought a new one. We've identified in adult services we had increasing demands around referrals and care management, so we've invested already and investing more in social work assistant roles, for example, to give us more capacity into the system. We've had a look at some of our kind of processes, and have pushed some additional resource into developing fieldwork services, and hopefully we'll improve our models around SDS, for example. Some of our workforce have talked to us about, I suppose, the administrative burden about things like SDS and managing finances and having financial conversations. So later on the pack, we've got proposals to push in some additional resourcing to support the frontline staff. I suppose the kind of concept of releasing time to care. So having our social work assistants engaging with the service user, the carer, and having other staff members who can support them with setting the arrangements up in the background. So we're going to do a bit of work around that. And we're also having a look at developing our senior practitioner role. We've already had that in play for quite a number of years around MHOs, so we've reviewed the rules around that, and will hopefully maybe enable more social workers to progress into that kind of job role and retain them within the service. And we're also embarking on a look at our management structure as well, because we also recognise that staff are attracted to different types of posts in other areas. So we're going to do a bit of benchmarking, having a look at what management roles look like, to make sure we've got roles which are attractive and both bring people in but hang on to people and give good career progression. So there's a number of elements we're working on actively, and we'll kind of touch on them as we go through the discussion over the meeting.
Yeah, Councillor Dunsmore.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry, Martin.
Sorry, apologies. Councillor Dunsmore, items 11 and 12 touch on some of that around the infrastructure we're putting in place to alleviate some of the pressures on frontline staff as well. So there's some good points in that we'll pick up on. And the last bit around consultation, what would actually, and I'll send this on to you, there's a very good piece of consultative work we've done as part of the strategic commissioning plan for health and social care, and it tries to touch on what we found from that direct consultation coupled with the needs assessment we'd undertaken for the area, and looks to try and give us a plan which is ambitious and covers those elements that you're mentioning around learning disability, mental health, and the other wider areas. So I'll pop that on to you because there is quite a lot of good testimonies within that we picked up on as part of Inform that plan, and we've done likewise with the Children's Services Plan. So as I'm saying, happy to send that on to you and pick up a chat with you separately on that, if that'd be helpful. I think that's me covered, the issues, Chair.
Thanks, Martin. Yep, I think that was a very comprehensive response. I would certainly recommend for people interested in the landscape out there in terms of social work to read the Setting the Bar report. It was carried out across Scotland, and it involved chief social work officers, social workers, and it's extremely illuminating in terms of the landscape out there and what our workforce are actually dealing with, which is very similar. The issues are very similar across Scotland. And for example, as Ian said, one of the key things coming out is 78% had said because of high admin workloads, they're being prevented from using the skills and abilities that they went into the profession for. So it's a very interesting report and goes into in some depth what the impact of some of the cuts in local authorities have had over the past 5 to 10 years. So I would certainly recommend that you read it. Okay, I've got other people. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on page 46, when we're looking at getting it right for children and young people and improving healthcare and well-being, it's just something missing in there about and it's interesting to see that CAMHS have now started to offer young people first appointments, but these people have been waiting for a long time, some people for over a year, up to 2 years, on those long waiting lists. I think we just need more of a joint-up working approach to that. We need to protect our young people. And I get that some of this is NHS stuff, so I do get that, but I would like to see some more in there about young people's mental health and the long waiting lists that people have been experiencing, because I feel that we're failing our young people, and we're not protecting them, we're failing some of them, and earlier interventions save lives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll ask Suman to respond to that. Thanks.
So thank you, Councillor Nelson. So just in terms of hopefully some reassurance. So one, we are very conscious around the demands that the pandemic have put on children and young people across the piece. That's been well recognised nationally. South Lanarkshire is not alone in that position. What I would highlight then is the children's plan we've got later on and some of the activity highlighted within that. You're absolutely right that there's elements of this require a joined-up approach. In fact, most of it requires a joined-up approach across children's social work resources, our education colleagues, as well as the NHS. Specifically in relation to CAMHS, I would just remind members that that is an NHS service. So in terms of the waiting list in respect to that would be a conversation for a different fora. What I would highlight, though, is that we should differentiate essentially different tiers of CAMHS. So when we talk about CAMHS as a traditional service, that's about the clinical input. But a lot of what you're talking about, Councillor, is very much about what we would call Tier 1 inputs. So that's about much more lower level activities, quote unquote, which would be to do with building resilience within communities, the access to counselling support within schools, the wider resilience work we would do within our communities. And in that regard, it's not even just a councillor and the public sector responsibility, it's one that sits across our community planning partnerships in terms of the work we can do to really support our children from lots of different angles. But again, I'm very happy to pick that up as an ongoing discussion because it's certainly something I feel very strongly about.
Thanks, Suman. Okay. I have Councillor Allison.
Just a quick question, Chair. I was pleased to hear from Martin about the increasing performance of the CPOs starts within 7 days, and I hope they reach the target soon. But can you tell us what percentage of the CPOs are actually then completed?
What I'll do, Councillor Allison, I'll get a breakdown of that data for you, if that's helpful. So what I'd mentioned just when we ran the activity again for Q1, because this is obviously covering last year, 21-22, was that had obviously risen up 74% and 72% respectively for those two areas. But I can get the breakdown of the figures for you around that, if that's helpful, and even just give you some trend analysis around it. I don't know if Gillian maybe wants to add into that. I know I kind of whizzed through the answer around some of the things that we were doing in terms of stepping back up, etc. And there is obviously reference to that in page 43, around some of the areas that we're trying to do to keep pushing that agenda. I'll maybe invite Gillian to see if she wants to say anything further.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. We've developed a new dashboard to be able to interpret trends and analysis for unpaid work service. So I will get that information for you. As Martin says, we are trying a number of different initiatives to try and promote service users coming in, both for their induction and to start their actual placements. And we've got staff now proactively going out and visiting service users, which had been difficult during COVID due to the restrictions, but now staff are better able to do that, to try and find out what some of the difficulties and challenges are for service users to actually come in and start. So we've started that, and we're beginning to see slightly better increase in uptake of starting unpaid work. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I come back? It wasn't the starts I was looking for, it was a number of the CPOs that were completed, rather than how many have started.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Councillor. Yes, as mentioned, we have a dashboard that will be able to pull that information for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gillian. I don't see any other comments. Can we agree with the report? Thank you. Item 8 is the Social Work Risk Register, and that's pages 67 to 84 in your report. And Martin again will speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an overview of the social work risk register and the main risks affecting the social work service. Obviously, we've touched on quite a number of these thus far around workforce, and we'll touch further on that as I go through the report. We're also going to just change the format of how we do this, or we're seeking approval to do that in terms of bringing this report to committee on a much more frequent basis. If members recall, what we would normally do is bring this on a once-a-year basis, but what we're looking to do is bring this to every social work committee, and I think that's important just in light of some of the discussions we've had around these risks and making sure that members are obviously cited in those. So the report itself follows the standard risk report that you would see, for example, going to Education Committee and the other committees. It follows the 3 lines of defence model, whereby operational services followed by risk colleagues, followed by external scrutiny of this is essentially those 3 lines of defence. Just drawing attention to specific areas of the report. What you'll see under section 4 is just some of those risks that I was talking about, which we would class as higher risks for social work to obviously be aware of, in terms of workforce, the risks associated with the National Care Service and the changes that may bring, and also ongoing things like how the Care Inspectorate obviously view our services and evaluate those services externally, which is obviously important as a benchmark for us to look at how we're doing. Just in section 4.4, you'll see the little diagram there, which is a heat map of where those risks sit. Now you'll see that 10 of those risks sit within 10 of the 19 sit within that higher level of risk. And the appendix at the back gives an overview of what those are. So there's quite a long list of ones, and then there's 9 that sit within that middle bracket. So just taking committee back to the recommendations in the report, effectively what we're asking to do, that the content of the risk register is noted and that obviously what we will do is bring future updates on a far more frequent basis to committee. And you'll see probably running through the reports that we've covered this morning, the risks that Hazel touched on around finance, the risks around workforce, some of the stuff that Ian mentioned, etc. There's an underlying theme around here, and a lot of the reports that we are bringing are obviously mitigations against some of these risks that are outlined in the report. But with that, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. I have Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions this time, Martin.
Okay.
The first one's on page 68 and it refers to 4.3, the last point around Brexit. I'm struggling to understand why that's being removed from the risk register at this point, given that Brexit continues to have a significant impact on our ability to recruit staff as well as to access supply chains. So maybe a wee bit more information around that would be really helpful, just to help me understand why that decision's been taken. And item 8 on page 81, which is, I can find it through all these papers. It refers to the methodology, calculating carers' budgets. So my question around that is, what does that actually mean? So has the eligibility criteria been updated to exclude service users who would have previously been assessed as eligible for support? And if so, how many people will be affected? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the Brexit one, and I'll get Ian just to take the one around the carers' budgets. So I think that was easier this time. That's only 2. So the Brexit one was removed in the context of that was a top council risk, Councillor Dunsmore. So what was done with that one is it was more around the preparatory bit of getting ready for Brexit happening, and hence why that's removed. I do take your point. There's probably a legacy bit there around things like, and we've touched on it before, workforce availability, etc. But that was the reason why that one has been removed overall. It was a top council risk, and generally top council risks feature in all of the risk registers of all the resources of the council. But I'm happy to take back even to the risk management group just to point that there obviously are some ongoing issues around Brexit and the impact that that's having on services. Just in terms of the carers' budgets, I'll get Ian to come in on that one, because that's an area that certainly he's been up the middle of.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Martin. Before Ian comes in on the question on STS, just to elaborate on that a little bit. So the other thing that we will be doing before this comes to the next committee, again subject to committee approval for the change to the routine here, is we'll be consolidating a number of these risks. So the key thing for me, in terms of your point, is actually about workforce availability. So rather than having a range of different risks that essentially all talk about the same thing, is actually the pool of staff we've got, we'll pull them into one, so hopefully that's more coherent for members, and you also get a better understanding of what we're doing in the round. But I'll hand over to Ian to talk about the point on SDS.
Yes, so in terms of carers' budgets, we're doing a bit of work and continue to do work to try and make sure we're supporting carers as effectively as we can do. So we really want to kind of focus on outcomes for carers, for well-being being one of the key ones for us to be concerned about. We've had the eligibility framework in play now for a number of years, and we'll continue to work to that in terms of focusing on substantial and critical needs. But we have previously invested in the carer centre, for example, to make sure that there's information advice, there's kind of low and moderate supports available for carers. So really what we're trying to do is make sure that we distribute the council resources as it were equitably to carers based on outcomes to be met, and to obviously take into account the supports in place for the supported person as well. So we have invested in that infrastructure. We have updated some of the approaches to that, and I think it's an area which we'll still be looking at over the next number of months, just to make sure we're engaging effectively with the carer centre, with the carers community, and making the processes straightforward as we can do, because I think we've probably got some rough edges, as it were, in terms of the current arrangements. We want to try and make it a bit smoother for folks, both for the practitioners and the carers in terms of that interaction. So we're going to keep on working on that area.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, I think item 12, enhancing supports for carers, goes into a lot, and it goes into some of what Ian's saying in more detail in terms of support for carers. And obviously carers have been hugely impacted by, including the pandemic amongst others, and have an immense amount of responsibility. I have Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm struck by the sheer large number of red bits on this report, if I can put it that way, of high risk and catastrophic disasters and things like this across the board. And I wonder if I can just ask if it does reflect the current risk, because the number one obviously is the pandemic, but are we not now at a scene where the pandemic, if you like, in the major part of it has been coped with? We're in a post-pandemic situation now. Is that still a current top risk in the way that we're talking about it there? And then maybe a secondary point, that further down there's the thing about the movement to the digital alarm arrangements. And again, is that at the level of risk that is suggested by this of not being able to achieve the objectives on that particular report? And I think we've had a report on that one in the past, but I wonder if we can have an update on that particular issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. I'll ask Suman to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So you're absolutely right in terms of the timiousness of some of these items here. So this comes down to the consolidation activity we'll be doing. Right. So we'll be refreshing all of these items to kind of what I would hope will bring a greater degree of coherence to them in terms of the current context. The two things I would highlight, though, one, we aren't in a post-pandemic environment yet. This is still the pandemic. It's just a different stage. And if you were to look at the levels of COVID within some aspects of our communities, we've continued to have spikes as we go through. That is one of the reasons why it continues to be really important that we implement measures we've got in place. For example, such as the vaccination campaign. So the COVID vaccination campaign kicked off on the 5th of September. A key priority group within that is health and social care frontline workers. So we're encouraging all of our staff to go and do that. And I would very much encourage all of you, in terms of individuals who are eligible to get vaccinated, to do so. Because COVID is still very much with us. What it does tie into those, compared to last year, is a much more volatile operating environment. So again, that's what we'll hope to articulate much more pungently and potently within the risk registers going forward. Unlike last year, where it was very much around COVID being the main thing, now we have COVID, we have cost of living, we have a whole range of uncertainties to deal with, and those are really challenging our services, which is another reason why we're very keen to ensure that this committee is very sighted on these risks going forward, and indeed the mitigation action we're taking. I would note, and I've said this in other environments, so that mitigation isn't the same as removal. So again, one of the issues that all local authorities, IGBs and other interested parties across Scotland will have to deal with is around the fact that there will be consequences, and that's why people need to make choices going forward. But I'll hand over to Ian in terms of your other point. The alarms, yeah.
So the community alarm thing was the other point I'd asked about. On page.
Yeah, I can pick that up. So I think, as both Martin and Seema have suggested, that's probably one of the risks we want to review, because we have done a lot of work on that over the period, and I think there's a further report update today on that. So, I mean, the risk was that we didn't. I went proactive around the analog to digital switchover. Our systems would not be available. So we've done a lot of work around alarm receiving centres, investing in some new equipment and building in the team. So I think as we sit today, that risk is probably the volumes turned down a little bit, as it were, in terms of the level of risk, and hopefully that will continue to be the case as we move forward. So all going well, that should be an area of risk that's well managed and will dissipate. But it'd be good to refresh that, Suman suggesting maybe for the next committee, just to make sure that's more sharply articulated.
Yeah, Chair, so in effect, this is more of a sort of historic statement, which is being modernised, and the reports we'll get at further meetings will, if you like, clarify what we're dealing with there with a greater focus on current risk. Is that right?
Yeah, so some of the risk, I guess, is a bit retrospective, and by bringing the risk register back to committee on a more regular basis, we'll be able to give a more up-to-date reflection of where we're at with that particular mitigations for that risk, and this is one where I think we would be able to show some progress.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Faulkner.
Thanks, Chair. It's just Suman's answer there. It encourages us all to get vaccinated. I'm quite surprised at that as a council and as a social work, that we're sending over 1,200 home care workers out and we didn't prioritise them getting the second booster. Was there a reason for that?
Suman, do you want to?
Thanks, Councillor. The health and social care staff have been prioritised. So there was information issued to all home carers probably about a fortnight ago, and the vaccination of home carers commenced at the beginning of September. So they were in the first tranche of the booster campaign. Yes, that's the most recent one.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other comments, questions. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Item 9 is the Social Work Resource Workforce Plan 2022 to 2025, and that's pages 85 to 98 in your pack. And Aileen McPake's going to speak to that.
Of this report is to present the Social Work Resources Workforce Plan for 2022 to 2025 and highlight the key strategic actions. So by way of background, the workforce strategy for the Council was presented to the Executive Committee back in 2016, and following that, resources all developed their workforce plans covering the period 2017 to 2022. And now, in line with their workforce planning cycle, resources have reviewed their plans and developed new plans to cover the period 2022 to 2025. So Section 4 outlines the workforce planning toolkit and the stages that are taken in terms of the workforce planning process. So essentially, resources look at internal and external drivers in line with their resource plans and see how this links with service delivery and the required workforce. The next stage looks at the current workforce data, the profile and the trends and the projections on future requirements. And these two stages then inform the objectives of the plan, what the plan will achieve, and resource management teams and the HR business manager will work together to identify the actions required to address workforce challenges that have been identified and reduce any risks to service impact and delivery. So moving on then, Section 5 is the workforce plan for social work resources, and a copy is attached in Appendix 1 of your report. So just to highlight in terms of the key themes for workforce planning that have been identified are sustained pressure on services and an increased demand that will continue over the period of the plan, a significant national workforce supply that requires action at a national policy level to impact change, the implications of the National Care Service and the impact on existing workforce and the ability to recruit, and maintaining the wellbeing and the value of the workforce to enable recruitment and retention across service areas. And in terms of the actions that have been identified to address these key challenges, they are to continue to invest in key areas, address the increased demand for services while looking at how to redesign services to maximise the use of available resources, review our recruitment practices to extend and promote social care by using a flexible approach and utilising employability routes. And Scott is going to show you some videos in terms of how we're using social media to promote the home care recruitment in particular. Establishing the Care Academy in South Lanarkshire to grow our own workforce and avoid a skills gap in future years. Robust career pathways being identified to enhance career progression and succession planning, and maintaining health and wellbeing of our workforce to ensure that they feel valued and supported. And all of that aligns with the general common themes from all resource action plans around increased demand and a reduced workforce pool. And again, as highlighted, this is a national issue. The demographic challenges that the workforce that we're seeing in the workforce, including increased turnover, employees retiring earlier than expected, flexible working requests and succession planning, and in general, employee health and wellbeing. And in addition to the resource workforce plan, there has been a Lanarkshire Health and Social Care Integrated Workforce Plan covering the same period, 2022 to 2025, that's been developed. And the current status of that is there's a draft plan being submitted to the Scottish Government with feedback expected in October, and then a final plan will be submitted at the end of the year. And when that final plan is there, a copy will be made available. We've talked extensively about risk associated with the workforce, so just to highlight that to committee, the reduced workforce supply is a risk to delivering the actions that have been identified in the plan, and this can be reduced by redesigning services to be delivered within the available workforce. The ability to maintain service requirements given the time taken to train and develop employees to achieve the correct skills mix given the complexity of skills required across different roles. There are competing recruitment drives across services and sectors that could impact on staffing levels in specific areas and ultimately performance and community outcomes. And then there is a financial implication in terms of incurring staff underspending employee costs and how this is accounted for. And once the arrangements for the National Care Service are confirmed and national changes to policy relating to workforce ability are introduced, then these associated risks can be reduced. In terms of how the plan will be monitored, it will be monitored through resource management teams as the arrangements of these national initiatives emerge, and any significant changes will be reported through to the corporate management team. So if I can refer committee back to section 2 and ask that the recommendations, that the content of the report be noted and that the social work resources workforce plan be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. I have Councillor MacDonald first.
Thank you. Can I just thank you for the report? As someone who works in social work, I've found this absolutely fabulous in terms of the content of it. Did find it a wee bit of a grim read, if I'm being honest, just in terms of around our ability to recruit and retain staff to provide services. So I just wondered if there was any risk at all of us being unable to fulfil our statutory responsibilities and duties, and if we're not at that stage yet, is there a risk that we could get there if things continue in the trajectory that we're seeing in terms of people leaving the service? Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for the compliment of the quality report. I would really extend the credit to that to our colleagues within HR personnel, but also within services. A lot of work's gone into that. I take your point. It's grim reading. In fairness to you all, it's meant to be. This kind of ties to the point about being upfront with members and committees in terms of the risk and the environment within which we are operating. This is serious business, and it's going to be serious for a while, and you'll know that, and a number of you know that given the roles that you're in professionally. In terms of the position around statutory services, that is, well, my starting point in that the team is our protection for the individuals. So we start from that. So in terms of child protection, adult protection, public protection, etc. And then we work out from there in terms of our statutory responsibility. So we will always look to make sure we've got the appropriate resource in place around that. And if that means we have to make certain operational and indeed potentially some policy decisions in consultation with members here in order to ensure we have resources focused in the right place, we will do that. We clearly did that on an emergency basis through various periods of the pandemic, most notably over the Christmas period last year. That was obviously for a short period of time, but I hope that gives members some confidence that, again, where difficult decisions need to be made to prioritise those in most needs and to fulfil a statutory obligation, we would do that. In terms of the ongoing piece, it feels like I'm taking my life in my hand about a little bit to say that in terms of where the risk will lie. All I can say is that we will continue to prioritise that as an area. And again, one of the reasons to make sure we bring the risk register back here on a live basis is to ensure that members, there's no surprises for members. And if we need to take managerial action, professional action, we will do. If there's a policy decision required from this committee or indeed from the IGB, then again, that will be brought to them at the earliest opportunity.
Thanks, Suman. I have Councillor Frame.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question. To help improve the recruitment, what's been done to look at the pay and also helping carers with the cost of living crisis? About pay depending on skills and qualifications, i.e. if you've got an SVQ2 or SVQ3, why should people coming in to start the job as in care get the same amount of wages as somebody's been in it for 5-6 years? And also, as a carer, you have to be registered with SSSC, and that is a fee of £25 a year. And is there any implement there for to help with the fee of paying that, to help with also with the cost of living crisis?
Okay, I suppose just generally on pay, Ian had already referenced that, you know, we do have at an ongoing programme in terms of looking at grades, just to make sure that the grades are in line with our job evaluation scheme, and that they're being looked at. And if there's any significant change to any tasks that are outlined, then we will look at that in terms of job evaluation. Generally in pay, obviously, I suppose nationally in terms of pay award, the pay award is just currently out to consultation in terms of trade union members, and part of that is a payment at SSC registration for employees. Okay,
Thank you. I have Councillor Brown.
Thanks very much, Chair. As Councillor MacDonald says, this is a pretty meaty report with a lot of stuff in it. I wanted to ask particularly about the Health and Social Care Academy, which the Grow Our Own Workforce idea. And I noticed that the delivery date is March 2024. I would have thought, looking at the thing from the outside, that looks to be a rather long delivery date on it. Will we get a report on the detail of this at some point in the near future? And why is there such a long delivery date, given the urgency of this? During COVID, we perhaps could have responded slightly more quickly to the urgent aspects of this. And I don't think anything in this report is more urgent than growing our own workforce.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Brown. Suman, do you want?
Yep, I'll start with that and colleagues can elaborate. So thank you for highlighting that one, because this is an area that we feel very strongly about, and is part of the an enhanced aspect we're bringing here. In terms of growing our own, a key element for us is about creating a pipeline, for those of you who are familiar in terms of this. So it's very much about the relationships between strengths from schools, up to the colleges, up to universities, into our service, and then what support we provide. Most of the work that we'd be undertaking on the an academy banner we already have in place. So number one, in terms of immediate actions, we are taking those. We've talked about some of those today already. Scott will talk to some of the specific in relation to care home, and you can see the post we're bringing forward. So most of the work that would fall within a care academy would not be quote unquote novel to what we're doing at the moment. What it does allow us to do, though, is to be much more structured and organised with our academic partners in terms of how we're doing it, and indeed with the rest of the public sector. So those will require a series of agreements to be put in place more strategically. So absolutely, we're looking at the next committee, a paper being brought forward to kind of define what the care academy will be for South Lanarkshire and who we'll be working with in terms of that. That will also be brought forward to the equivalent organisations in terms of their next steps forward. So essentially we are taking all the actions or material we are taking as we speak. What we're doing though is wanting to make sure those are bedded down and structured for the medium to long term, so that not only do we grow not only are we dealing with the current crisis, but actually we know where we're going to be over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. So a big element for that is to have much better quality of joined up working across the public sector, and to have much more considered relationships across our academic providers. So that's why that will take a little bit of time in terms of, if you like, the building blocks for the final creation of it. But in terms of the actual activity involved in it, and I'll be looking to Ian and Aileen to provide kind of details on that, please be reassured we are well on our way in terms of doing that work right now. But I'll pass it to Ian first.
Yeah, so just to give some assurance, we already do work around foundation apprenticeships, modern apprenticeships for social care, and we really want to look at how we consolidate and develop that. We've also got an eye to our external partners, so as well as council staff, we're very much dependent on the independent sector to deliver services and make sure they've got a pipeline of staff coming through as well. So a number of us have been actively involved in discussions with the local colleges around their offer and how we work more collaboratively with them, and Eileen and I have recently been involved in work with colleagues in North and NHS Lanarkshire on the existing Care Academy arrangements to kind of develop the memorandum of understanding for South as well, and that's also pulling in some of the universities. So meeting last week we also had, I think Caledonian was there, and we're looking at the University of West of Scotland being involved as well, to try and just pull together for Lanarkshire a coherent strategic kind of pipeline of workforce. So how do we work better with universities and colleges to make sure they're pulling in the right student, as it were, with the right job offer at the end of the road, and what can we offer in between times in terms of learning opportunities, work placements, etc., that supports their kind of programmes as well. So confident that will pull together over the next few months, but it'll take a wee bit of time, given academic timelines, to actually fully deliver on those opportunities.
Chair, I'd be very grateful if we could get a report to the committee at some point in the not too distant future, giving a bit more detail on this. It's pretty much an important initiative, and I think it's important the committee have, interest and oversight of what's taking place there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be possible to get a report with the detail. I've got Councillor Allison.
Thanks, Chair. I had two questions, but Councillor Brown has covered one of the areas very well. The other area I was wanting to raise is in page 92. It's obviously highlighting the workforce shortages, and it's identified that the situation will not change unless there is Scottish Government action. Is there any indication that the Scottish Government are going to try and address this issue at all and help our service users? The second point regarding this, I should perhaps have raised the last time, because the only thing they seem to be concerned about just now is the National Care Bill. And this council, along with every other council I'm aware of in Scotland and COSLA, have highlighted the dangers of that bill and the unsuitability of it for supporting our service users, should that not have been on the risk register.
I'll ask Suman to respond.
So thank you, Councillor Allison. So I can obviously speak for what the Scottish Government themselves are doing. All I can say is that we've raised these issues with them at the highest level in terms of highlighting the particular issues around workforce. I know that's tied into a lot of discussions, obviously, going in terms of the COSLA offer that was recently made, and that's one of the reasons, I think, from government's perspective why, and indeed COSLA's perspective, why the SSSE registration was covered within that. But in fairness, that's very much the point and a challenge to government at a national level. All I can say is that we continue to raise these points with them to highlight the kind of real inequities in terms of the position we find ourselves in across some of our staff groups. At a local level, though, and Scott will talk more about Home First in particular, that's a really good example of what we're doing. So our focus has been what we've got control of and what resource we've got, and that's where we're really ploughing on with. In terms of the risk register point, I would note that the National Care Service was touched upon within the risk registers, so that's already covered within that. But again, as I've already mentioned, we are looking to consolidate that and streamline that in terms of live reporting, within the context of the submission that this council has made back into the select committee process in terms of the NCS. So that, again, that will be something that we'll regularly update as the situation in terms of that legislation moving forward is adjusted. As I have said, though, I think at the previous meeting of this committee and in another fora, the big issue for me, this team, our staff, is actually about how we deal with the current issues, the immediate, the short-term issues. The NCS, whatever your particular view of it, it isn't going to help with where we are right now. And Audit Scotland have highlighted that a risk of the NCS process is that it could distract from what we deal with the immediate issues here and now. And again, part of our job as officers to demonstrate to you that we're taking the actions that we need to do here, to bring forward proposals to you, to engage your support in terms of other actions that we need to take forward collectively, and to continue to make that case to government.
Thanks, Suman. And just if I could say, Alec, these issues have been raised and continue to be raised through COSLA in terms of the national issues, which is quite rightly pointed out in the report. In terms of the demographics, the increase in demand, increase in older people, the workforce issues, recruitment, the financial landscape, in terms of what's coming down the line, and these issues are consistently highlighted through COSLA and will continue to be highlighted, because at the moment the picture it is not looking very optimistic, and as I say, as the officers have clearly outlined here, and the risk register, as Councillor Brown pointed out, is extremely worrying when you look at it, and it's only right and proper that it is brought here before the Social Work Committee and we are aware of them, and as the administration Labour group there we continue to highlight this through COSLA and look for solutions and a lobby for additional funding to be able to deal with the situation that we're dealing with. The papers that are on the agenda today put forward excellent recommendations and actions to tackle the issues, particularly in relation to the workforce plan. All of the actions in the workforce plan are positive, they're excellent, particularly as we pointed out the academy, but we are working in an environment environment at the moment, which is extremely difficult, and it's only going to continue to get difficult unless there is a change of direction in terms of the policies that are going to be implemented by the Scottish Government. I don't know, Ian, did you want to come back in? I don't know. No, sorry. I don't have any other comments, so can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 10 is accelerating preparations for winter, Home First, and that is pages 99 to 104 in your papers, and I'll ask Ian to speak to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the first of a series of papers in the pack which link to the strategic commissioning plan, the workforce plan, the risk register. So it's about investing in posts to deal with some of the issues we've been covering already this morning. So this first one relates to the funding that came in from Scottish Government to expand care at home capacity and multidisciplinary team working. We've already commenced this work. The previously approved posts from the council side of this post from the NHS side as well. It's been working around hospital discharge and admission avoidance. So we've chosen to invest this money at that kind of early intervention stage to maximise people's independence, to make sure they've got early assessment, to get access to the SDS choices, and then for those who need ongoing care services, they're moving on fully assessed and with options to kind of choose how they have their care provided. So really what we're asking in this report is to establish the second phase of the programme, really, so additional management posts, but primarily kind of carer posts, which will deliver care at home services across South Lanarkshire. Touching on some of the other discussions we've had this morning, maybe draw your attention to the senior home carer posts we've included in this model, so it provides a stronger kind of career structure for our carers. So there's a promoted post for carers to move into to provide some supervisory and support capacity for the colleagues delivering services. So really ask you to kind of turn your attention to the recommendations in section 2 to note the report and to establish the posts that are set out in section 6.
Thanks, Ian. I have Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. Just sort of carrying on for the conversation that we've been having today around staff. And I noticed in 6.1 it says added to the establishment on a permanent basis as detailed below. So are these posts already in place, or do we need to recruit to them? And if we are recruiting to them, how confident are we that we will be able to fill these posts in the current climate where recruiting staff is extremely difficult?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair reflection. So the funding is substantive. So these are new posts we're looking to establish on a substantive basis. Roles such as community support coordinator, social work assistant, we're very confident we'll fill those quite straightforwardly. The challenges we've touched on already is the speed of recruitment for the home carer posts. So we are seeing good numbers of people applying for our jobs. We're very proactive in terms of marketing the job role. We're now getting a kind of ahead of the curve, as it were, in terms of matching the people leaving and those maybe reducing their hours with the new people coming in. But we don't anticipate this is going to be a quick fix. It'll take us some time, I think, to fully recruit into those posts, but we wanted to take every opportunity to bring people in and not have any delay so we can recruit people substantially. I think we're aiming for, it's about 24 people per month we're trying to bring in at the moment. So hopefully over the next few months and as we move through the winter we'll get closer to our establishment figure in the Home First arrangement.
Thank you. Can I just ask then, Ian, in terms of the risk across other resources, is there a risk that we could lose staff from other resources across the council to fill these posts, which might leave other areas understaffed? And the rates that we're paying for social work assistants for these posts, are they comparable with rates across the rest of the authority? Thank you.
Yeah, well, we believe that the rate for the social work assistant posts are competitive. There's different kind of incremental points in the scale depending on the job role, but we're asking people to do assessment and review activities, so they're paid at the higher end of that element. And I suppose the answer, yes, we probably will draw staff from other parts of the system, not necessarily the council, but from other parts of the social care system. Similarly, when we recruit into our own care home service, the council offers a better set of terms and conditions perhaps than some of the independent providers, so we do attract some staff in from other providers. So what we're really concerned about is a gain at the universal level, as it were. We just need more social care staff in the system, so there is risk attached as you're setting out. Hopefully we can manage that just through the recruitment processes, but we do need to be sighted on the impact on the wider system.
Thank you. I have Councillor Falk.
Thanks, Chair. Just in the interest of fairness, I did mention earlier that care home staff in North Lanarkshire are paid £2,000 more than our care home staff, but social work assistants in North Lanarkshire are paid £2,000 less than our social work assistants. And I do believe we've recruited 7 for the North recently, just in fairness.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other comments, questions. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Next item 11, is enhancing social work fieldwork capacity, and that's pages 105 to 110 on your pack. And again, I'll ask Ian to speak to that. Thank you.
Okay, so again, this report is setting forward recommendations to increase the staffing establishment, again based on additional funding that we've received to support the capacity within social work fieldwork teams. We've recognised, I suppose, 2 things. One, that there's a supply issue in terms of pulling in qualified social workers, but also that our existing teams tell us that some of their activity isn't necessarily social work orientated, it's more administrative, it's more finance related. So we are putting forward a set of proposals essentially to invest in posts that will support the frontline staff with their jobs, so finance assistant posts, administrative assistants, for example, to relieve them of some of that work and release social worker time. We're also putting in a couple of posts to support the first year post qualifying. So traditionally we recruiting a lot of newly qualified workers. There's new standards that require us to support that workforce more effectively in their first year post qualifying. So we're proposing we put in a couple of staff, senior practitioner level, to enhance their learning opportunity and make sure they develop well and hopefully stay with us in the longer term as a consequence. We've also flagged up, as we've talked about over the meeting, investment in the structure. So we've remodelled the criteria for becoming a senior practitioner to recognise a broader range of qualification experience and allow us to recognise that workers' skill base financially through their position on the pay scale. So we set aside a little bit of money from this fund to support that. And as I noted previously in the meeting, we're having a look at the management structures, the team leader role, which seems to be about out of sync with similar roles in other local authorities. So we are losing people from South Lanarkshire to neighbouring areas because they are offering more attractive jobs. So we're currently having a look at that structure, and we've set aside some of this money potentially to invest in the management and support infrastructure as well. And we'll come forward with a future report on that. But just to put a marker down here that we suspect there'll be a little bit of a cost attached to that, and we've tucked away a little bit of money from this fund to cover that. So again, ask the committee to look to section 2 in terms of the recommendations, to note the report and agree to the changes in the structure as outlined in points 2 and 3.
Thanks, Ian. I have Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Ian. I'm guessing that the cost that's associated with the senior practitioners is just an increase in salary, because it will be people that will be promoted up to senior practitioners. So can you maybe tell us how many do we currently have and how many posts would this fund? and what the criteria would be for someone to move from being a social worker to a senior practitioner?
Yeah, I can cover some of that. In terms of the fine details about exactly the number of posts, I'll probably need to kind of provide that later on. But essentially at the moment, most of our senior practitioners are our mental health officers. So obviously the MHOs have got a particular role. They've got to undertake additional study to a master's level to qualify as an MHO. So we've long kind of recognised that. So I think we've got something like 45 to 50, off the top of my head, MHOs who are currently at senior prac. But what we don't necessarily recognise at the moment is people who do additional qualifications in adult support protection or workers who are well experienced and carry very complex cases. So we've refreshed the kind of criteria to take account of that. So recognition that people who are carrying complex cases or may do things like practice teaching, supporting their less experienced colleagues with coaching, taking a more kind of formal role within their kind of sort of personal career evaluation. They would potentially go through the salary bar. They would get paid a bit more, and that's what the funding would cover. But that would hopefully help us in terms of our retention issues, because what we see is, for like Glasgow City, if they're advertising for workers, they're offering a higher salary rate, so our kind of 3- and 4-year workers are being attracted towards those job roles because they're stuck at that point in the salary bar. So hopefully by offering them a little bit more, recognising their skill set, we'll hang on to a few more of those workers. So that's the intention.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I don't see any other comments. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 12, enhancing carer supports. This is pages 111 to 116 in your pack. And again, sorry Ian, it's you again. Thank you.
Is microphone on? Yeah, so again, this is picking up on funding on the back of the Carers Act. We've been at committee previously with our range of investments around carer support, investments in the carer centre, investment in our infrastructure, investing in care management support. So this is really the next set of funding around that. We're particularly kind of focused on the assessment and care management element. So we make sure we get to carers quickly, we assess their needs as early as we can do. We understand what supports they have in place. So we need to have sufficient infrastructure in play, social work assistants, social workers, etc., to deliver on that. So we're proposing here that we invest in that element of the workforce. So team leader, social workers, social work assistants, primarily to boost our capacity in that respect and make sure we're supporting our carers as effectively as we can do. So as we touched on elsewhere in the meeting, rising demands around demographics. So we need to increase our workforce to be able to both meet the additional burdens of the new legislation, but also just the general demographic trend and the level of need. So we're keen to invest from that point of view as well. A bit of admin support in there as well. And we're also asking to invest a little bit more in telecare, because we see telecare, telehealth as one of the key areas in which we can support both service users and carers in terms of some of the digital technology coming online now. We'll talk about later on down in Blantyre how we're trying to make use of technology better to support families to make sure we're alert to any crisis emerging at the earliest possible opportunity. But we do need, again, staff with the technical expertise to work along that. So we're asking for a little bit of additionality from this funding there. So again, I'm asking the committee to consider the recommendations at section 2 and approve the addition to the establishment.
Thanks, Ian. I have Councillor Frame.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got one question. There's been a new procedure put in for allocating carers their work for the day. And I've had some constituents coming forward that this was to put in place to help with continuity of care. One of our constituents is 31 different carers in 3 weeks. So can you explain to me how this is supposed to help with continuity of care and person-centred care when the carers that are going in are not even reading the care plans for that person because they're getting 31 different carers? So what was wrong with this? What was wrong with it previously that had to be changed?
Okay, so I think that's not entirely linked to this report, but I think what you're referring to is the new care at home IT system, Total Mobile, which we've been rolling out across the South Lanarkshire over the past kind of year or so. So that's just about completed in terms of its its process. So really we had a very outdated, very sort of manual system in place before, and they were replaced with an dynamic electronic scheduling system. So that really identifies a kind of patch area, as it were, matches the needs of the service users on the day with the availability of the workforce. And one of the intentions, in fact, is to maintain continuity of care, to limit the number of individuals going into care for someone over a period of time. So I'm hoping what you're describing is a bit of an outlier case, but good to hear the details of that, just so we've not missed that. The main challenge or risk with a system is over recent months, I've touched on COVID absences in general. If you have that kind of spike in absence linked in with perhaps as we just had the school holiday period, that might mean you've got more carers going in normal. But what we're trying to do is manage that kind of delivery of service as tightly as we can do in terms of linking the home care team with the service user and minimise the number of people going in, including use of our kind of peripatetic staff. So each team's got some peripatetic staff to help us cover for holidays and sickness and so forth. So those teams are also built into that kind of patch area within the system to try and minimise that. So if you can give us details of that, we'll certainly look at that particular case.
Thanks, Ian. Just to clarify though, Councillor Frame, this is actually referring to unpaid carers. I mean, which is different. This is about funding under the Carers Scotland Act, but obviously the issues you have raised, can be raised with Ian in another at a meeting, or if you could put it in writing, but it's not specifically to do with the recommendations in this report. Suman.
Thank you, Chair. You've answered the point I was going to say quite eloquently. Thank you.
Okay. Are you happy then, Councillor Frame, if you want to take these issues up separately? Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Faulkner.
Thanks, Chair. I just took 3 questions, 2 of them just for my personal information. Could Mr Beattie tell us, is the Totally Mobile been rolled out throughout South Lanarkshire? Right, that's fine. Number 2, did we not recently give the carers organisation £500,000 to join together the Lanarkshire carers and carers together?
Yeah, so we've taken 2 or 3 reports through Social Work Committee over the past kind of year or so on funding linked to the Carers Act. So yes, we have invested in the Carer Centre. In fact, we then, I think the last committee cycle that we had, we invested further in recognition of the increased demand on the centre and the number of carers coming forward. I think probably COVID certainly provoked a lot of that additional demand. So we've invested in capacity there. So I suppose the strands we're having a look at is the Carer Centre in terms of advice and information and kind of low and moderate supports. For carers who have more substantial and critical needs, we're trying to invest in the council, fieldwork teams, infrastructure, so we can pick up those households and provide support for them. We've also invested a bit in, I suppose, infrastructure around things like training and development within the central team, and we've also invested in an actual, I suppose, the spending power, the budgets to support carers around kind of respite and SDS budgets and so forth. So those are the kind of broad strands of what we're trying to do.
Chair, with your permission. And my main question is, you've highlighted throughout the day how important carers are and the amount of money we're investing. Well, I'm quite surprised that a recent meeting of the Hamilton Disability Health and Disability Forum that you attended, we were discussing the consultation on the daycare review. And the carers rep pointed out that they have 5,000 registered carers. In your report regarding the consultation, you said that you'd consulted National and that. Then the carers rep said you never even consulted the Lanarkshire Carers Centre, which I find very surprising. We didn't consult the main carers in our area. Was there a reason for that?
So in terms of the day service reviews, there has been extensive consultation, and I guess one of the things we pick up is you can never consult enough. We throughout the process proactively consulted with service users, with carers who used the centres, with staff who made referrals, staff who worked within the service. We've subsequently sent out a range of surveys in terms of some of the principles of the proposals for redesign. We've had Teams meetings with some of the constituent audience who use the day services. But in a way, yes, there's more we could and are doing around consultation. So I think it was a good example of consultation, but I think lesson learned is we need to kind of make sure we extend that consultation as far and wide as we can do in any future service reviews.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I don't see any other comments. With that, I'll move on to... sorry? Oh, sorry. Do we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. With that, I'll move on to item 13, and I would suggest that I think there's a video with this, Scott, as well, so that might well take us to 12 o'clock when we'll be required to take a break. Are people happy then that we take this item and then have a 5-10 minute break? And I'm also conscious of the fact there's a Finance and Corporate Committee at 2 p.m. So if we maybe come back about 12:10 and try and get through the rest by 12:30, she said optimistically. Is that agreeable? Yep. Okay, I'll move on to preparing for winter, enhancing care at home capacity. That's pages 117 to 122, and I'll invite Scott to speak to this, and I believe there's also a video. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks to provide committee with an update on the progress of the care at home redesign, and also seeks approval to consolidate some existing fixed term posts, as well as establishing some additional resource to sustain improvements and support the further development of the services. In June 2021, the Social Work Resources Committee approved proposals for the redesign of care at home services, which was basically established to enable the service to better respond to the challenges of service demand and to the increasingly complex needs of service users. Some of the key aspirations of the redesign are highlighted at section 3.3. The redesign has continued to progress despite the challenges faced within the service throughout the pandemic, and achievements to date are outlined under section 4.4. These include, just to summarise, the introduction of an enhanced structure that provides greater focus on assessment and care management capacity, a focus around service quality, and staff management and support, which very much includes the provision of support over an extended period. So we now have staff and managers in place between the hours of 6:30 in the morning and 11 o'clock at night every day of the year, basically reflecting the times which services are actually delivered. And as a result of that, we are phasing out our exit from the emergency social work service, where out-of-hours calls would currently be directed towards. Work to fully implement the redesign in all localities is on target, and we anticipate that will be completed by the end of this financial year. There's been an awful lot of discussion today, and obviously, as outlined within the workforce plan, a key focus of the service has and continues to be on recruitment and attracting staff into the service. And that's obviously, as we've all previously discussed, against a very challenging backdrop of an employment market. The service has done a range of things over the last 18 months and has embarked on an extensive recruitment campaign to attract staff into the service. As Ian has previously highlighted, that has had significant success. However, it's also been at a time when we're also trying to keep pace with the turnover within the service. So we have brought about 5,000 additional hours into the service. However, we've lost round about that same figure to the service recently. What we are beginning now to see is a turning point, or the tipping point, that our net increase month on month is now starting to come through. And as Ian again had also mentioned, we're anticipating an induction of 24 staff every month. We're planning for that on a 4-weekly basis. The campaign has been wide-ranging. It's included bus adverts, case studies, significant and extensive social media marketing, attendance at recruitment events. In fact, there was a very successful series of council recruitment events took place just over the last fortnight, which resulted in over 50 interviews for care at home staff. Discussions with the head of personnel and Eileen indicate that we'll be looking to do much more of these, because it's certainly been a really positive response. These have been successful, but there's much more we need to do, and I think, as we've discussed throughout the meeting today, to attract more numbers into the service. As part of our next stage of our recruitment strategy, we've devised a series of short videos that we publicise on social media over the coming weeks and months. And I'd like to show you a couple of them, really just to showcase some of what our intentions are, but also some of the really good work that our staff do within the service.
Andrew, could you play the video, please?
Obviously, over to Andrew.
It wasn't a natural progression into starting a new job or helping out, because it was just this, it was surreal. And I think that's what makes it more special that I decided to stay, because you just feel as if you've joined at a time when it's been like a completely different world, but then on the other hand you got to see the best of people, because the carers were out doing it. They did get up every morning and go to their work. Morning, Lyle. And at times there was this big question of, well, I get it today, well, I take it home to my family, but they still got up in the morning and they still went and they still done it. And I just think that's, I just seen them as, that seems stupid, but not superheroes as such, but just I was such in awe of them that they'd done that. That they put themselves on the line every day because they were needed.
I was 12 years, I was taxing, modern taxing. You can't drive a taxi without being able to talk to people. And 75% of this job is getting into people that are lonely. I'm maybe the only person they're going to see all day, so they want to talk.
Morning, Betty, it's Callum.
Hi, morning.
They've all led lives, different generations, and they've all got stories to tell. So I'm quite happy to get in there and chat away with them while I'm doing my work. And if I'm coming away and they've got a smile on their face, it makes my job a lot easier. It's all down to trust as well. You've got to gain the client's trust, and once you've got that trust, then it's so much easier to do the job. Some people need that hand to get up and then help them in the shower, dress them, the whole aspect of make their breakfast, help them with their medication. As I say, I get a buzz out of it. I get self-satisfaction knowing that I'm helping them.
Sorry, okay. That's part of a series of videos, many of which we don't have time to show you all today, but hopefully it gives you a snapshot of some of what we're trying to do within the service. And hopefully, one of the things that struck me is how relatable those videos are. The staff put a real smile on my face. You can imagine just how much of a smile they put on the service users' faces as well. So hopefully that will connect with the kind of wider public. Going back to the report, the progress made within the service to date has been supported through the establishment of a number of posts, which the Social Work Resources Committee previously approved on a fixed-time basis. These posts have become increasingly valuable and have made a huge contribution to the operation of the service. It's become increasingly evident there's an essential need to retain a reduced number of those posts to support the further development of the service. There's also a need to strengthen management arrangements with localities in relation to care at home and the alert response service, and approval has also been sought to establish 1.5 full-time equivalent locality-based posts to enhance our capacity. The full staffing proposal is summarised at section 5.1. And if I could then just turn committee's attention to, again, section 2, and committee has been asked to approve the following recommendations, that the contents of the report are noted, that the proposals outlined in section 4 with regards to staffing and infrastructure capacity are approved, and also that the post conversions and additions to the social resources establishment under section 5 be approved as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for that and for the DVD, which was it's always good to actually see something in action rather than just the written page. I have Councillor Frame.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I just want to bring up that how it was fantastic and it was like a breath of fresh air to finally see some positive from social care, because there's been so much negative. I've spoke to yourselves before with the idea of bringing VTs and everything up, because I think the community and everyone out there has to see what the carers are providing and the service we're providing, and we don't have the negative that has been all around COVID. So I just want to thank you for the VTs that you've put up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's much appreciated, and certainly a lot of what we've been trying to do over the last kind of 12 months has been very much about showcasing the work of our staff, because they really are phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been really good in terms of having all of the papers today that tie up with each other in terms of the services that are being provided, you know, with the home first support, the carer support, and the field work, and how it's going to provide, you know, a comprehensive service across South Lanarkshire. And it's been really interesting having all these papers here giving us that overall picture of what's actually happening within home care and within social work, and how each of these developments should complement each other. Councillor Faulkner.
Thanks, Chair. Nobody can deny the contribution that home care workers make to the most vulnerable people in our community. And Scott, you and Ian will know I've had several discussions with you. I've had several presentations about this IT mobile scheme. I mean, we were told it would shorten the distances between each service user you go to. We were told that you wouldn't be going from the top of one street to the bottom of one street, from the end of one scheme to the other. But my kind of experiences that I've been told is that staff are still going about. Staff go to bed at night, their first call's at 8 o'clock on one side of Hill House, and they go up in the morning and their first call's the other side of Hill House at 7:45, right? And they're travelling about. I'm just seeing if all these snags have been addressed. The last time I addressed this, and Ian Beattie was quite prominent in saying to the mic, contrary to what Councillor Faulkner says, the system's working well. That was on Thursday, it crashed on Sunday, but that happens. But it's just to see if we're getting to the grips with the IT mobile scheme and the schedulers and the recruitment and retention of schedulers. I mean, we're on the same game to look after the most vulnerable people in our community. And it's not a criticism or try to be politically, just to see the service we are providing. Thank you.
I think there's kind of several questions tucked away in there, so I'll try and work my way through them. So we've recently completed the rollout of Total Mobile across South Lanarkshire. East Kilbride was the last locality, so it was completed literally a few days ago in terms of the rollout. So we'd expect there'll be some settling in issues to make sure the system's working effectively. But I think the key point is it's a dynamic scheduling system, so it responds immediately there's a change in the circumstance. So what we're trying to do is optimise the use of our carers to make sure they've minimised the amount of downtime. You're right in terms of looking at the travel arrangements, because kind of there's mapping arrangements built into the scheduling tool, so we configure it so the carer works in a particular area, as it were. And it's linking them to the care that's required in that area. So the example you gave about, you might see in your list, starting somewhere else in the morning, and you're working in the morning and it's changed. That's what the dynamic scheduling system does. So we do partly ask the carers to be responsive to the who needs cared for within your area. So we do want to minimise the amount of travel, etc., because that's costing in terms of care time, potential care time, and hopefully as we develop the system, sharpen up. So some of the posts we're talking about in this report really about further developments of the system will make it even better. So I'm convinced it's a better system than the one we had before, which is very manually dependent, very much depending on what was in the care coordinator's head in terms of how best to schedule. This is a much more effective, much more dynamic system, but is a different way of working. It's different for the people who are doing the scheduling, and it's different from the carers in terms of how they deliver care, because it's much more reactive and responsive than the old system was. So hopefully people will get used to that in time. We are continuing to recruit into the scheduling scheduling posts. As Scott's indicated, we've got schedulers now working from early in the morning through to late in the evening, 7 days a week, public holidays. Before it used to be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5-ish, with a couple of staff available out of hours. So this is a much more resilient system we have in place in terms of managing care, monitoring care, supporting our carers. So it's a safer, more effective system we've got in place. We've been pretty successful, I think, over most localities in terms of recruiting into the scheduling posts. There's a few still to be filled because quite a number of these posts, I think, because East Kilbride's last, it's the last to get the staffing filled up, as it were. So hopefully over the next couple of months, all going well, we'll have those staff in play, and we'll just be dealing with the normal kind of turnover arrangements. But it is a new system. It's not going to be 100% on day one, but it's now fully rolled out. We're getting there, and we anticipate as we move into the end of this year into next year that we'll be delivering on the outcomes we hope for. There have been one or two glitches with the system itself going down. I think, as you alluded to, we've addressed that quite robustly with the provider. We've met with the more senior team there and expressed their concerns about that situation, and they've taken action to remedy those problems and to try and avoid that happening again.
Thanks, Ian. I have Councillor Frame, who I'll take as the last speaker before we go for a break. Thank you.
It's just a quick question. Since the rollout's nearly complete now, have we got a scheduled date for going back to our service users, families, clients, carers with a survey to see if they think the new system is better than the old system, or is that something that we've looked at to get their views?
Yeah, I mean, part of the process of self-evaluation is we do need to get service user kind of feedback, and where we're currently looking at arrangements for trying to make that more regular, more accessible to folks. So it would be good to get some feedback. So I think particularly in the areas where it's been rolled out first, it might be good to go back and just test out what's people's experience of it. Are there any learning points for us to take forward in terms of improvement? Because the team we're looking for here will take forward continuous improvement. So we want to get good feedback loop going. So what's working, what's not working so well, let's make improvements and make it even better.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I don't have any further comments. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, I suggest we take a break, come back just after 12:10. Thank you. put the card in. Hi, welcome back everyone. I think there are some councillors that are going to join us remotely. I think Tracy's just going to check if they're on. Okay, thank you. So I'll move on to item 14. It's strengthening community alarm digital capabilities, and this is on page 123 to 126. And I'll ask Scott if you can speak to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is concerned with the Council's approach to the transition from analogue to digital community alarm technology, as we've spoken about earlier on during the kind of risk register, and seeks approval to ring-fence slippage monies arising from Home First programme to enhance staffing capacity for a period of 23 months to support the large-scale replacement of equipment for users of the service. It also seeks to establish posts which have been aligned to previously approved capital expenditure. Committee will be aware that telecommunication companies are scheduled to switch off the public switched net telephone network by 2025, which essentially means that the current landlines in the homes of ourselves and service users will no longer work and will require to switch to digital capacity. This means that the current analogue community alarms will no longer be compatible with digital, and for us, approximately 7,000 service users will require their technology, basically their alarm, in their homes to be replaced by new digitally compatible equipment. Use of capital monies to fund the replacement programme has previously been approved, and to date approximately 500 units have been replaced. However, you'll appreciate we still have another 6,500 to implement. As I said earlier on, the capital programme is also, will also fund the establishment of 6 posts that will support the installation and monitoring of the equipment for a period of 23 months. However, as we've been moving and progressing through the plans for the replacement, we've identified that there is a need for a further 2 posts, which would basically help us to seek to extend this arrangement over a 7-day period, rather than just having the capacity to operate over a Monday to Friday period. It's therefore proposed that these additional posts are funded from the ring-fenced slippage arising from the Home First programme, and also for a period of 23 months. In addition to that, the Health and Social Care Partnership has recently secured £15,000 in funding for the National Technology Enabled Care Fund. And basically that is to support work to establish a project manager post that would help us to exploit the benefits of digital and redesign the way in which we operate our community alarm services. Moving to digital gives us the opportunity to do a whole range of new things in the way in which we can actually support and monitor the well-being of individuals, and certainly having someone to lead that work would be very beneficial in terms of enabling us to take that forward. And again, we're looking for the remainder of that money to be funded from the slippage in the ring-fenced Home First programme. The staffing and the financial implications resulting from these proposals are presented at 6.1 and at 7. And if I could then maybe just bring committee back to the recommendations, and committee is asked to approve the following: that the context of the report be noted, that the proposals outlined in section 4 with regards to additional staffing be approved, and that the additions to the social work resources establishment as outlined in section 6 be approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Sorry, I don't see any other comments. Can we agree the report? Agreed. Thank you. Next item is item 15, enhancing improvement support, and it's pages 127 to 130, and I will ask Ian to speak to that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this report is looking for temporary investment in a couple of posts. Committee members will have picked up a theme of change and improvement as we've been going through the agenda. So there's significant investment, significant change around social care and the health and social care partnership. So we need some capacity to help us work our way through that change process. So we're looking in this report to establish a couple of posts to help us with that. So a business expert and a kind of project expert, as it were. So we have got some of these post holders in play on a temporary basis, and this is really a proposal to extend some of our capacity within the service. So really asking folks to consider the recommendations in section 2 that we establish these 1.6 additional posts on a fixed term basis for 2 years.
Thanks, Ian. I don't see any questions. Okay, do we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 16 is enhancing multi-agency public protection arrangements, MAPA, pages 131 to 134, and I think Martin's coming back on to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just add a little bit in just before I do my report, just to say that I do apologise to Councillor MacDonald. I think I called him by another councillor earlier this morning, so apologies for that. But just again, similar to Ian's report previously, this should hopefully be quite a straightforward report. In terms of looking for additional admin support within the MAPA service. This service currently operates across North and South, so in terms of an actual financial contribution to this, we would only be looking for South Lanarkshire to contribute 7,000, with the remaining 7,000 coming from our North Lanarkshire partners, because the service does operate Lanarkshire-wide. So it's really to deal with capacity issues around the fact that there's been an increase in MAPA meetings. And beyond that, Chair, I don't have anything further to add. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Martin. I don't see any questions. Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Next item is the Blantyre Care Development Progress Update, and that's pages 135 to 138. And again, I'll ask Ian to speak to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this report, I suppose, covers a couple of bits. So firstly, just a quick update on terms of the Blantyre development. So pleased to be able to report that build is coming to a conclusion in terms of the 20 tech-enabled houses, which I think were quite an innovative approach to housing with support. I think they are now either occupied or have got an occupant identified for them. So that's progressing well. The actual care facility, intermediate care arrangements, we anticipate getting the handover of the building towards the end of this month. There's been a couple of last-minute delays in supply chain and so forth, but it's coming along pretty well, and we hope to take possession of it shortly and start fitting it out. So really asking the committee to note that. We're also looking today for approval for the name of the building, and the proposal we've got today is it's called Blantyre Life. So that's kind of reflecting the concepts of living with innovation, living fully, and that being part of your everyday circumstance. So embracing the use of technology and care and the best of what we can offer. That is trying to be contained within the concept of Blantyre Life. It's also linking it to the notion of a home for life, and that idea of using the facility to help the person return to their own home and thrive and be independent as they can be in their own home or a homely environment. So those were the connections. So we're really looking for the committee to note the report and to consider approval of the naming of facilities Blantyre Life. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. I have Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. This is a political question for yourself to answer, not the officers. Are Labour now in support of this excellent facility now that they're in administration, after initially setting up a petition and campaigning against this facility while in opposition? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. I was actually recently out to see the facility at Catherine and I were out, and it really is progressing well. What I would say, though, in response to your question, that the administration we're not against variations in different types of service models for older people. The issue at the time was, as I believe, and my comrades will correct me if I'm wrong, that the money was earmarked for residential accommodation. And no, you're absolutely right. The Labour group is against cutting residential beds, and it was on those grounds and some of the issues around governance that we felt were pertinent at the time that we were actually against what happened, that it was transferred from the project it was earmarked to the Blantyre facility. So yes, to that extent you're actually right about that. However, that came about under a different administration, so if that ship has sailed, if you like. I mean, the Blantyre facility in itself is going to be an excellent facility. It's going to help to keep people out of hospital. It is going to support people in the community. It's very innovative in terms of the technology and the way that the flats are going to be linked to that facility, and also that it's going to have a community-wide breadth as well. It's not just going to be those immediate houses, it's going to have an impact in that surrounding community. So we were not against that. We support innovative and different models of care for older and younger people. It was the circumstances at the time, and that wasn't under our administration. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I'm just glad to see you have done a U-turn and are now fully supporting this facility. It's an excellent facility. Thank you.
Okay. I have Councillor Frame.
I've been lucky enough, I was invited along to see the Blantyre Care development. I would say I was privileged to be invited along because it's a fantastic development. Not only is it going to be great for people coming out of hospital for rehabilitation, the flats, we went to see one of the flats, which are absolutely fantastic, and it doesn't look like a care facility. It's up to now, it's back in, things in care can be very dated, whereas this is in the future. What I also like, and I think we have to promote, is the actual community wing that is going to be there. They're offering, well, they say they were offering like different training, and that could be sourced out and other companies can then link in to that care facility to join in that training. So I think when it's up and running, that should be advertised so that other care facilities can then join in to link in for the training. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frame. Those are really good points. Councillor Allison.
Right. Thanks, Chair. As someone who's always supported this facility and the modernisation of our care facilities, it's good to see it progressing so well, and I look forward to actually contributing to our care package. I'm a little bit surprised at the name. It sounds very uninspiring, more like a sports centre. Where did this come from, and is there not should we not maybe be looking to see what the community say in regards to this?
Yeah, in terms of the name, there was quite extensive discussion to consider what the options were. I think Blantyre Life came out of deliberations. I say the life bit was trying to reflect, living individually, fully in an everyday way. So that was the idea behind the life elements. We have tested out the name with certainly the immediate neighbours who seemed to think it was okay. It maybe took a little bit of explanation so they understood the life part of it, but once they understood where we were coming from, they seemed to be quite happy with the proposal. But I say there was a number of variations considered, and I felt this was the best we could come up with.
Thank you.
Could I, Chair, I think normally we need to broaden it. Ask the local members. I've nobody in our group that are party to that, but I don't like the name, and I think we should be and I would formally propose that we consult politically with local members as to what we call this facility. Thank you.
Alice Summons, come in.
We'll, of course, do whatever the committee asks of us in terms of this process. I would note that we had been in touch with the leaders of all the groups in terms of this, in terms of sounding it out before we brought it here today. So I understand that was a conversation that the Chief Executive had.
I'm not aware of ever having been contacted.
Just for clarity, I didn't do that.
Councillor Allison, could you request to speak again? I think we've lost Councillor Allison. We can come back to him if he comes. Councillor Allison?
Thanks. Finally, no, sorry, Simon, I have no memory of any leaders ever being contacted regarding this name. And I've spoken to one other, and they've no recollection either.
So are you moving a motion, Councillor Allison? That
Yes, I'll move the motion that we actually consult with local councillors and any organisations to come up with a name that's more reflective of the importance of this facility.
Is that seconded? Okay, there's a motion been moved. Does anyone have any?
Can I just check if you're moving the recommendations in the report?
Well, do not take the motion first.
We'd normally take the recommendation in the report as the motion if the chair's going to propose it, but if you're not, then we'll take Councillor Allison's as a motion.
Okay, so can we vote on the report first then?
Well, what happens is, well, it's just for the name, so if you don't want to move the motion and everybody's in agreement to go out and consult, we don't need to go to the vote and we can just agree then.
Okay, but I have other speakers actually that need to bring in. First, Councillor Nelson.
Richard. It's me out now.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if that was seconded in the chamber or not, but I will second Councillor Allison's motion to go forward with, to have that name discussed further within the elected members. And I would like to actually add a wee bit more that the community is involved within that discussion. I know Councillor Allison has already intimated some partners, but to come up with a name and not this wonderful facility that we've been working on for years that we've all supported, and just to appear with this name, I think is not giving it any justice, and I think we need to reconsider that, and we need to move forward and discuss the name and appropriately and come up with a different name. The name is just not suitable, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
I know your camera, your speaker.
I switched it off.
The line. I'll just continue. I'd like to congratulate this initiative. Being a manager and knowing supporting staff in order to care for people in their own home, it can be a big hassle in terms of the equipment that you provide. So I was delighted when I saw hoists and different things. So the whole service is taking account of dignity of the service user and the dignity of staff in providing that care. So well done to the team that brought this on stream.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Bradley.
I'm really glad to see this project approach fruition, and would like to congratulate both the social work teams and the housing teams involved in it, despite all the hiccups that they've had to go through, from the initial hostility that Councillor Anderson highlighted, through to the pandemic and the interruption to supplies. That's been an absolute nightmare for a project of this size to actually get to this stage. So I have to congratulate them, and I'm really glad to see the administration embrace this project now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bradley. I've got Councillor McClyman.
Thanks, Chair. No, it was just to find out what how we would go about this, the practicalities of how we do this, because we'll come up with 100 or 200 different names. So it's just how we're going to actually propose how the staff would do this for us. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions. I'm kind of sensing that there is support in terms of going out to consultation around the name. Would the meeting agree to that? Is there any opposing? No. Okay, that's agreed. And do we agree the recommendations in the report? Okay, thank you. The next items are 18 to 23 are items for noting. I would propose that we take them as one, unless anyone has specific issues they would like to raise. No? Is that agreed? Councillor MacDonald?
Sorry, Chair, I've got a couple of questions on the items for noting, if you would permit. First one relates to item 20, and it's around the gradings that have been provided. So I'd quite like to know what were the previous gradings for Canderhaven House and Roslyn Avenue, and what improvement plans have been put in place to improve the quality of service overall in both establishments. And if you'd like, I'll do the second one as well at the same time. It's relating to item 23. I'm just wondering if that should read Daldork House rather than Dalroch. And if that's the case, has there not been fairly significant issues with the care provider previously? I think at one point there was a moratorium on the use of that service. So I'd just like some reassurance that we are confident that they have brought their service up to a standard that we would be happy with in terms of using that for our service users. Thank you.
I can pick up a couple of those points. So, in relation to Canderhaven, the way it's a new service because it's the precursor to the new Blantyre development we just talked about. So, we essentially deregistered Canderhaven as a traditional kind of care home and re-registered it as a intermediate care facility. So, this in a way is its first inspection under that guise. So, it was quite a positive outcome, broadly speaking, in the context of a building that's probably. Well, it's not probably isn't optimal in terms of service delivery. So we anticipate that will be that maybe is our benchmark for going forward and see improvements as we move down the road to the Blantyre hub. And you're right in terms of it's still dark, and what's it's reflecting is kind of changing service delivery model. We are obviously individually reviewing those service users, and we've recently established a kind of quality and commissioning team who've been down looking at those arrangements to make sure they're safe and robust. So I do recognise the challenges you've referred to in terms of its history, in terms of some concerns about care delivery, but I think that's moved on a little bit. We're keeping a close eye on how that develops, and we'll, both an individual and as a service entity.
Thank you. Any further?
Just to get a response on the Children's House, I got a response for Ian in terms of Canderhaven, but in terms of Roslyn Avenue.
Right, I don't have that information to hand, but I can get that to you separately.
Okay, thanks, Suman. Any other? No. Well, with that, I have no urgent business, because I thank people for their attendance and their contributions, and thank the officers for the reports that have been presented here, and just thank you all for attending. Thank you.